During a spiritual awakening, it is very common for many of us to go down several different wormholes. Some of these wormholes seem like they are never-ending and lead to more questions than they do resolve answers. So today I will be explaining the number one topic that people could get sucked into and stay inside a never-ending wormhole, which is the shape of this earth. In order for us to answer this question, we would first need to know the esoteric function of our reality. The esoteric function of our reality is that everything that is as below, meaning in our reality now, is mirrored or reflected to us in the above. So when we're talking now about whether or not there's such a thing as space at all, or if it's completely fabricated hoax to keep us all very far away from the truth of our reality, what it comes down to is there's several different layers to this. There are layers to buffer us away from understanding the occult science of space, as well as there are layers to keep us stuck in our current status quo of what we think that space and the earth is. So to first start, we would have to know what this alchemical conundrum of squaring the circle means. Because, go figure, alchemy is related to this age-old topic of whether the earth is round or flat. It all starts first with shapes. And in alchemy, there's a saying that is known as squaring the circle. Squaring the circle has many different layers to it. One of them is a psyche. It's a psychological layer, which means to merge elements that don't seem to be able to merge, that don't seem to be able to figure out their place and figure out their harmony within one another. But then we have this alchemical phrase of squaring the circle on all different scales of reality. So when we start referring to the physical layer of reality and not the psychological layer, now squaring the circle takes on a completely different meaning. And one of those meanings is the physical shape of our reality. Squaring the circle is actually an esoteric truth of the shape of our reality, or what exactly we are in, and calling it a planet or calling it Earth. And what this means is that there's planes of consciousness, and that would be known as the square, because squares, in this case, when we're talking about them in geometrical shapes and figures, is referring to a flat surface. So square in squaring the circle would mean flat or a plane of consciousness. Alchemy means the divine chemistry, and the divine chemistry means to create and to change form. We call this change evolution, but alchemy is also the process of creating something physical. It is the process of spiritualizing the physical and materializing spirit. So alchemy is the process of materialization. And squaring the circle is a part of the process of materializing our dimension, our planet, and the entire exterior reality. If consciousness is a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere, then the square is the process of the infinite, the all, projecting forth into the physical, material plane. So the square is the stage of materialization, where it takes the 360-degree omnipresence of the sphere and then projects it into a plane that is manifested through the four elements: fire, water, air, and earth. And then that creates the four directions: north, east, south, west. We will always find proof of the square from circling the square throughout our reality. We will always find its artifact because it is a part of projecting our consciousness into the physical. Because the square materializes the sphere, and the circle part would be a sphere. When we're talking about a sphere, we're talking about the holographic nature of reality. Now, why would a sphere be referring in an esoteric terminology to the holographic nature of reality. It's because everything, including all of the different dimensions in higher realms, all are spherical. Because our consciousness projects itself into a physical reality, otherwise our consciousness projects itself into a hologram that then produces a physical reality. That is a sphere, because in a hologram, there is always a 360-degree surface that is a projection from our internal stars or our internal constellations. So we are projecting our light outward, and it's going 360 degrees, and it's also what we're calling the holographic nature of reality. And that truth coincides, it's in harmony with the masculine principle, or the square, which now brings into the equation that yes, we are in a spherical 360-degree hologram, but also what all of Esoterica ever has just referred to as the different spheres. Realms are spheres. So when you find yourself in a new dimension, aka realm, that's just called or referred to as a sphere. And the link between it being called a sphere is always because at a deep layer that dwells deep within our unconscious, we are aware of this inner truth that everything is a 360-degree projection, that we are always in a quantum sphere. If you still need to learn and get this point better, you can watch my video where I go into more detail about this, called The Fifth Dimension Explained. Now that coincides with the masculine principle that there are planes of consciousness. So planes of consciousness would be the organization of the different bandwidths. And those different bandwidths are called dimensions. Even more, those different bandwidths are stacked up, and they're really called densities. So whichever way you prefer to call them, whether you prefer to call them dimensions or densities, they come in a set of octaves that are stacked up, and those are planes of consciousness. And so planes of consciousness get on well with the holographic nature of reality. But once you start looking at them from a very microcosmic perspective, and you start seeing these circles and squares and trying to reconcile them into occult science, now we start having a lot of compelling evidence that leads us to believe that we're seeing everything through the horizontal or flat aspects of our reality, or planes of consciousness, and then a lot of occult science that points to there being a spherical nature of Earth. And sometimes they look like one argument is actually supporting the other argument, or that argument is just supporting the other argument. So we start basically putting our focus, putting our perception onto one part of the occult sciences, meaning the hidden sciences of how reality is created. And once we put our focus on one aspect of that, what we will find is that there is an endless amount of knowledge that will support that argument. And it's not because that knowledge is fake. It's because there is so much truth within that information and knowledge. But that's not the whole truth. And because that's not the whole truth, that's why these wormholes we can stay in forever and never get out of. It's because it's endless. We will always find compelling information and compelling evidence that the earth is flat, because that is a core truth of the nature of our reality. Just as the earth being spherical has compelling evidence for it. So this is why there's so many people that are confused about this topic. And then it's just easy to go and put everybody who believes that the earth is flat into this conspiracy theory category, when in reality, these are people who have delved deeply into the nature of reality, but simply just keep finding the same compelling evidence for half of that equation. And what that ends up leading to in the long run is our spirit being cut off from the higher esoteric function of our reality. What is the higher esoteric function of our reality? It's that there actually is space, and that there actually are formations of bodies that are not just the earth. There's formations of bodies that represent the different cycles of consciousness that a spirit goes through in this universe. One of those being stars. We might completely cut our spiritual connection off with stars if now we learn that all of space is fake and a hoax. So do you see how a consciousness can get stuck in either going down a wormhole, learning a lot, becoming a lot smarter, becoming a lot sharper in their perception and their discernment, but then accidentally getting lost in the sauce and just simply falling into the trap of everything is fake and has no esoteric function or purpose? Or can you see the opposite side, where a consciousness can get trapped in the status quo and therefore never be able to tell when our space or when the formations of bodies around us are actually going through initiations, are actually taking human consciousness into initiations, actually have a deeper purpose, a spiritual purpose? So both of these equations, either staying in the status quo of the earth is round and space is exactly how we're told, or that there is no such thing as space and it's all a hoax, are both extremes that will lead a person to not understanding the true esoteric purpose behind our reality and our connection to it. So one might naturally ask at this point, what is the esoteric function of space? What is the esoteric function of the bodies in space? They all serve as physical representations of higher dimensional consciousness. So what we see are outward representations. What we're actually not able to tune into is that there is life. There are ascended realms or ascended worlds, that many of these bodies that we see actually are just the physical representation of. So they exist at a higher plane of consciousness. Their existence is at a higher plane of consciousness, and that formation that we're seeing there, such as a star, is not where the life force, is not where the activity is taking place on, but what we see within our reality. What we're seeing is a physical representation, is a stargate of that higher level of reality. So we can't perceive that higher dimensional existence, but what we're seeing in its place is the fact that there is a remnants there, or a physical symbol, structure, formation there. And so that's why so many times we call even communication with higher density beings aliens or extraterrestrials. Extraterrestrials would assume that they're coming from another planet in our reality, when that's not the case. So many of the times they're existing at a higher level of being. So they're not extraterrestrial because they're not terrestrial. They're more higher dimensional or higher density beings. And what they're doing is tuning their frequency down to our level of reality or our plane of consciousness to interact in some way. And just like that, we're seeing formations within our space and within our external reality, symbolizing the best way that our unconscious can form and conceptualize of these higher dimensions. That's what we're seeing. So when it comes to, for instance, moons specifically have an esoteric function. And what that is they hold the karma of whatever they are orbiting. So its esoteric function is not, oh, it's completely engineered, it's synthetic, there's no such thing as that, or it's completely negative because it exists. No, there's always an organic purpose for every formation that there is. thinking that all formations are either just purely negative or synthetic, meaning that they're not really a part of our natural reality, are ways that we get pulled into an extreme. And when we're pulled into an extreme, we're not able to fully connect with the fact that we are in an organic universe that has organic experiences and organic bodies within it that serve a deeper spiritual purpose. So we get cut off from that because we get too hypervigilant and we're stuck in the fear perception of what these bodies represent or what reality represents. And we're not able at that point to see the full spectrum of that. The occult science of space is that it is a deeply esoteric process known as reciprocal maintenance. I will explain reciprocal maintenance in depth in another video. But space is literally the evolutionary scale of consciousness, the dynamic equilibrium and exchange of energy through a chain of sympathy that we can't even perceive with our physical eyes. We are meant to learn the esoteric function of this universe to better know thyself. So when it comes to moons, karma is what they represent, and they represent lessons that are meant to be integrated, which is why moons pool. They have a pool. What is karma? Karma is a pool. That's what that is showing. It's showing the unlearned lessons, and as well as it's showing whatever is the fate of that collective consciousness. So you need that to rule over any type of experience where there's a lack of consciousness. The moon is what represents the laws that a person is under. So they're deeply under the pool of karma if their consciousness is not above or has not resolved and balanced those lessons. Same thing when it comes for all of the different planetary spheres. They're operating at a higher dimensional consciousness, meaning there's life there, but we won't be able to see it in a terrestrial form. So they're operating on a different bandwidth, meaning a different plane of consciousness, but what we're only seeing is the physical manifestation, and which is the physical shell of that higher level of reality. So the activity is taking place at a higher density, but what we see now is just the archetype of that. So Jupiter is an archetype. Saturn is an archetype. Venus is an archetype. All of these different planets are an archetype. And so it's not that, oh, planets don't exist. It's more so that planets is actually referring to the spiritual connection to higher realms that is now manifesting in this realm as the archetypal lessons, the archetypal challenges and benefits of each of those formations. Cutting off our occult awareness of the constellations and the purpose they serve actually is quite dark. It's a way to keep us in such a low state of consciousness that we are in a frequency of aversion to the very reality that we are inside. In an ideal reality, we wouldn't have to worry about such dark purposes as to why to keep us disconnected from our inner stars in the first place. But that's also why I went into spiritual teaching, when I could have been a rap star. The sun perhaps holds one of the most occult functions within our reality, which is to help steward the earth consciousness and help with its initiation into higher levels of consciousness. So the sun is our galactic heart center, where it beams to us higher dimensional light codes in order to help our consciousness progress and evolve. And so as we can see, when we merely just write off all of the external reality as not being real or being completely fake, now our consciousness has evolved to a certain point and has incurred a lot of intelligence by going down those wormholes, but at the cost of us now cutting off our deeper relationship to our own spiritual evolution. This truth of reality being both comprised of a sphere as well as a plane, is also known within the ancient texts as a firmament. That is what is being referred to as a firmament. And what better shape to show this in within our own eyes? Our eyes are that firmament. And within that firmament lies the harmony of a plane as well as a sphere that then gets projected outward. And that projection is that of that internal light of consciousness that then is what acts itself out as the lessons, as the stages, as the initiations, as the rite of passages of consciousness. I hope this has helped you circle your square. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.